have heard of people just disappearing into thin air. But what about towns and cities? This is Lavender Rose in the midnight hour with another bizarre tale of something disappearing. This one is called Urkhammer, Iowa, and I'm sure some of you have heard of this tale. It was, as they called it, a bustling town back in before 1928. But this started happening in 1928. And before that, bustling town of about 300 to 600 people, if you call that a bustling town. But we'll call it a bustling town. I guess it was a town that was doing. It was busy, you know. Anyway, the small rural town was apparently in rather good shape and just as normal as any other mid-American town around this time of 1928, a farming community. When some aerial photos emerged that appeared to show that there was perhaps simply no one living there. It started out sort of slow. It started looking just abandoned, and we're not talking ghost stories here. We are talking flipping, just slowly disappearing. And that the fields looked overgrown and untended. Things took a turn to the decidedly weird when there's a report from a tourist passing through who stopped at a gas station in the town to fill his tank, after which he learned that he had been ripped off and that there was no gasoline in his tank at all, so he angrily headed back into town, but reported that he could not reach it. But he did, obviously, the first time, but he could not reach it. He ran out of gas and walked, and he could not reach the town no matter, it's like 2 miles ahead. And he's like, but it just never came. And the town which was still sitting there, I'm sure he could see it in the distance, still maddeningly before him, but forever out of reach, no matter how much he walked. That would be cool. I had dreams similar to that before. Other people driving also past the town began to report that the previously bustling town, if they want to call it that, seemed to be abandoned and lifeless. And when some investigated, they purportedly found rows and rows of houses sitting peacefully with no sign of the occupants. The story goes that this was indeed reported upon by several local newspapers, such as the Clarion Sun Telegraph. But these reports were drowned out by the impending, you guessed it, stock market crash of 1929. A bad time for something to happen, because if you're a little town and you're slowly disappearing, and then there's a big stock market where people were losing like millions of dollars and jumping out of windows, what do you think's going to be more important there, right? Probably not you, the little town. So, other reports of anomalies would come in from the town as well, such as people who seemed to have witnessed the town actually evaporating into thin air, as if being absorbed into some other dimension. I think it just somehow, for whatever reason, sort of blipped out of that timeline. Maybe something happened that changed that there was no town there, and it just sort of slipped out. Just sort of like some people say that they knew someone and all of a sudden that person doesn't exist anymore. Well, that can happen to a person. I suppose it can happen to a town. And with one such account concerning a group fleeing through the area during the Dust Bowl of 1932, so the town was still-ish there. I mean, I said it was a slow thing. And going to the town to retrieve supplies, the story which was written goes like this. Imagine their surprise when they were unable to mount the steps leading to the store, their feet each time passing through the lowermost part of the step, as through a cloud. Convinced that this was some kind of plot to prevent outsiders from shopping at the store, right, they were going through a bad time, and so they don't want people to shop at their store. I'm going to say no. They attempted to scale the steps using an old board found nearby, but imagine their surprise when their feet passed through both the board and the steps. Now, maybe if that board had come from somewhere else, but it came from that town. Imagine their surprise that when their feet went through it as easily as a potato passes through the smoke of a campfire. Terrified, of course, the man did what most people would do, and they got the heck out of there. They ran back to their group and reported what they had seen, only to be accused of spending the group's hard-gotten money on illegal hooch rather than on beans and bacon. But they displayed the money. See, there it is. And challenged the others in the camp to try the same experiment, to go to the store. So a group of a dozen men, some armed, I'm not sure why they were armed for, went back to the general store and, lo and behold, had the same eerie experience. The caravan covered the fires and decamped, and they got out of there. They didn't want any kind of... No. They went to the Urkhammer Sheriff's Office to converse. A group of state police did. They went to the sheriff's office in Urkhammer. And yes, the group's leader approached the office of the guardian of the peace and attempted to knock on the door, only to see his hand pass through it. As thick as oak, it just went right through it, like it was painted steam. Their report began the gradual decline of Urkhammer. It became less substantial with every passing day, and passers-by noted the absence of children playing and the growing seediness of the houses. It just got every time less and less and less and less. Eventually, it just seemed to disappear, and there was nothing. Where the town had stood were only abandoned fields and long rotted fences. A cast iron bathtub of long-gotten time passed by. Watering trough for livestock, it just sat lifeless in a field of weeds. No human presence, no buildings, just everything gone. And there was even a group of gypsies that had passed by, and they didn't want to stay very much there either. One of the gypsies said that the place was saturated with the tears of the dispossessed, and with the despair of those who had never been born. In later years, people would begin to move into the region and find that indeed there was a town there that had grown weed-choked and feral, crumbling away into nothingness. It remains unknown just where all of the people of this alleged town went, or even if it ever really existed in the first place. And it has always remained a mystery. Some people say that later on, I think there was someone that wanted to build houses or something there, and they dug up and they see that there was some remnants that looked like where the Dust Bowl had totally covered what was used to be maybe some buildings or something broke down. So who knows what happened to that town? It just flipped out of existence. What do you think? There's another town here from Ashley, Kansas. And that one seems to be a less believable story. On the evening of August 13th in 1952, a caller named Scott Luntz claimed that there was a fire in the distance. And that was described a bright red-orange and seemed to extend high into the sky, and numerous other calls would begin to flood in claiming the same thing, further adding that the fire seemed to be coming from the sky itself. Throughout all of this, there was no similar reports from any other neighboring communities, only of this place, Ashley. And it seemed to be confined solely to Ashley, Kansas. According to the story, another of the call of this came from the morning of August 14th of 1952, when a frantic local named Benjamin Endicott contacted police and in utter panic to claim that there was a vast fire in the sky that had turned night into day. The following day, just 2 days before the earthquake, because there was supposedly a big earthquake there too, would bring perhaps the strangest and indeed the last purported call from Ashley, placed by a Mrs. April Foster. The transcript as this conversation supposedly goes like this. Officer Welsh, Hayes Police Department. Muffled static. Officer Welsh, hello? And then the lady says, April Foster says, yes, hello? Officer Welsh, ma'am, who am I speaking with? Foster, my name is April Foster. Please, sir, please help me. Officer Welsh, what is happening, ma'am? Foster, last night they came back. Officer Welsh, ma'am, I'm going to need you to... Foster, last night they came back, she cries. Officer Welsh, ma'am, I'm going to need you to calm down and speak clearly. What happened? Who came back? Foster, everyone. Officer Welsh, everyone? Foster, they all came in the fire. Officer Welsh, what do you mean, everyone? Foster, my son. I saw my son last night. He was walking down the street. He was burned. Jesus Christ, he was burned. Officer Welsh, ma'am? Foster, he died last year. I raised him since he was a baby. Of course, I would hope so. It was just me and him. I told him to watch for cars when he rode his bike, but he never wanted to listen. Officer Welsh, ma'am, what you're saying isn't making any sense. You said everyone came back. Foster, are you effing listening to me? Everyone came back. Everyone who died or went missing, they're back. And they're looking for us. Sounds like a bad horror movie, doesn't it? He said, Mommy, I'm okay now. See, I can walk again. Where are you, Mommy? I want to see you. And she sobs. Officer Welsh, ma'am, where are you now? Are you safe? Foster, I'm hiding, just like everyone else. We saw them coming through the fields, and some people have opened their doors for them. God, the screaming. I don't know what happened to them, but their houses caught fire, and they caved in. I have my curtains drawn. I'm hiding in the closet right now. And silence. Officer Welsh, ma'am, is everything all right? Are you okay? Foster, silence. Officer Welsh, ma'am? Foster, glass breaking. Oh my God. Officer Welsh, ma'am? Foster, something just came in. Officer Welsh, ma'am, stay as quiet as you can. Don't make a sound. Foster, muffled. Mommy, sobbing. He came inside. Officer Welsh, stay absolutely still. Don't leave. Foster, sound of muffled footsteps. Mommy, where are you hiding? Officer Welsh, stay quiet. Foster, Sound of heavy footsteps, laughter, muffled. I found you, Mommy. Indiscernible screaming and noise. Officer Welsh. Ma'am? Ma'am? And supposedly that's where the phone call ended. Now, and that's supposedly the last call. A lot of people, of course, don't believe the story. They think somebody made it up. I think it went around in 2012. They started hearing of the city. Now, did it ever exist? And if it did all of that happen? Did somebody just take something that was a mystery and make something more of it? I don't know. I find it hard to believe that dead people came out of a fire or missing people came out of a... It sounds like a scary movie, right? But I never say never to anything. But anyway, just thought that would be interesting. The first story I'm more apt to believe. The second story, who knows? But anyway, I just wanted to tell you a couple of stories, a couple of mysteries. What do you think? Anyway, I hope everyone has a wonderful Friday and a wonderful weekend ahead, and